Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for this month's class by mail. I'm Gina Wieselman of MySweetPaper.com, and I'm so excited to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards using the Season of Elegance suite by Stampin' Up. If you ordered a class by mail kit, go ahead and pull out your supplies now. If you didn't order a kit, visit my website, linked in the video description, to access a supply list for the class, which includes all the parts and pieces with their specific measurements. You'll also need the stamp set, ink pads, and other supply items shown here. If you need any supplies, use this month's host code or designate me as your demonstrator to qualify for all of my promotions, including receiving 3 completed cards from my collection with every order of $50 or more. Click subscribe on this YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, and reach out anytime you have questions or would like to chat more about Stampin' Up. Let's get started. Our first card design is the Bright and Beautiful Labels card. If you ordered a class by mail kit, everything was cut and shipped right to your house, so go ahead and pull out all these parts and pieces and get ready to stamp and assemble. If you didn't order a kit, pause the video here and prep everything that you'll need. We are going to start with our stamping, so go ahead and pull out your Pretty Peacock ink pad. And for this card, we have our focal greeting, and then we also are stamping on the Lost Lagoon pieces. So I'll pull out my Hoping This Season is Bright and Beautiful stamp, and that is going to go right on the center of this die cut piece. And I should note all of the beautiful dies that we're using, of course, are part of the Peaceful Season dies set. Next, we have the 3 identical pieces of Lost Lagoon, and I'm just going to stamp Peace and Joy in the center of each of those pieces. And I should note, as I'm stamping here, this card was very much inspired by the Stampin' Up catalog. So I switched up the color scheme a bit and, rearranged a few things, but I love being able to draw inspiration from the ideas that are already out there. That is all of the stamping for the front of this card. Of course, if you want to stamp anything on the envelope, feel free to do that. And I actually think it would be a lovely touch to stamp Peace and Joy on the outside of the envelope as well. And then you also have a piece of Very Vanilla that will go inside the card. If you'd like to stamp something on that, this stamp set has so many great greetings, so you could choose any one of the greetings. I did also include with your kit a piece of the Designer Series paper to go on the inside, so just bear that in mind in terms of placement as you're deciding whether and what you might want to stamp. With my stamping complete, I'm going to go ahead and start the assembly of this card. And I'm going to start with this piece of Pretty Peacock cardstock. So this is going to go on the front of the card, but because of the way these pieces run off the edges, I want to make sure that this is assembled and trimmed to size before I do anything else. So the first thing that I want to do is just kind of lay out all of my pieces. And it's especially important because I don't want this greeting to get cut off. So I want to make sure that I'm starting everything, kind of where I want it to go. I'm also going to pay attention to where everything is in terms of whether it falls off the card and whether any of the little punch out pieces are overlapping. Because I did notice with my sample that if that gets clipped, there's a tendency for that to kind of flap up. So for this one, I'm going to try to avoid that. And of course, we know that the ribbon will be spanning across either side here. So I also am going to try to get the one with the most gold to be showing. So I'm just kind of playing around with placement a little bit here. And you can also play around with how close or how far apart. It looks like I'm putting them slightly closer together than I did on the sample, but of course you can do whatever you think looks good. I'm just trying to make sure that I like what's being shown and what's being cut off. And I think that looks good. So I'm just going to pull these up one by one and start assembling. And again, as I'm laying them back down, I'm going to make sure that I like where they're ending up and making sure that, like I mentioned, all of the overlapping parts are doing what I want them to do. The other thing that I'll note, I am going to hold off on the focal one because I think I'm going to use dimensionals for that. Again, my sample, I did not use dimensionals, and it was kind of a situation where as soon as I had pressed it down, I realized that I preferred, or I probably would have preferred the look with dimensionals. So I'm going to try it out in this video, and of course you can see both options and choose whichever you like the most. Okay, so everything is secure except for this one. I'm just going to set that aside and then grab my paper snips, and I'll just flip this over and trim off anything that crosses over onto the back. And I wasn't super careful when I was putting my adhesive on, so you probably, if you were like me, will have some pieces that are a little bit sticky. Oops. But not a big deal at all. Okay, next I am going to bring out this ribbon. And I have to say, this ribbon actually is a retired item, which I don't usually use for the classes by mail, but I had a good stash of this, and it's a gold and very vanilla metallic edged ribbon, and I just loved the way that it looked with this card. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Of course, there are many other ribbons that you could substitute as well, but your kit came with a longer piece and a shorter piece. And I'm just going to string the shorter piece through the left side. About halfway. And then do the same with the longer piece on the opposite side. And if you get any ribbon fuzzies, just clear them away. And I am trying to make it relatively flat. It's a thicker ribbon than the width of the punched hole, but as long as you kind of are careful about putting it in smoothly, I didn't run into any problems with attaching that. So then I'm going to go ahead. I still haven't done anything to secure the ribbon, but I'm going to bring out I think I'll do the mini Stampin' dimensionals on this one and get a few of those down. And I'm going to be generous with these. It probably doesn't need 4, but I really want to make sure that this focal point stays up. So I'll peel those release papers. And then again, just being careful so that the ribbon stays positioned and doesn't get, pulled through. I will position this on the card like so. Next up, I am actually just going to use my good old Scotch tape for securing the ribbon on the back. You could use dimensionals to kind of span the ribbon and the card, since we'll be using dimensionals to pop it up on the card base. But I found that just a piece of Scotch tape was really easy to apply. And I'm just positioning it so that the ribbons aren't 100% overlapping, so that you get a little bit more kind of dimension with this. So I'll just do one piece on each side of the card. And I am, pulling it to make sure that it's nice and tight and secure, oops, as I tape it. Okay. Now I will set that aside for the moment. I'll bring out my Pretty Peacock card base and bone folder, and I'm just going to give that a nice crease along the score line. And then I'm going to be using my full-size dimensionals to pop this up, and I'm going to be securing the inner panel with just my regular Stampin' Seal. So since this will be popped up, I'll do the inner panel first. And first I'm just going to add a little bit of Stampin' Seal to this decorative piece. You can decide, you know, top or bottom where you like it to go. If you like it all the way to the top or with a little strip of very vanilla showing, there's different ways you can position this. Or if you stamped something inside, maybe you don't want to use it at all. But if there's any excess, go ahead and trim that. And then we'll get this secured inside. So we'll just center this up. And then, like I said, for the front panel, we'll use our full-size Stampin' Dimensionals. And again, I want to make sure that this doesn't collapse, so I'll be pretty generous with these. Just peel the release papers. And center this. And bringing back our stamped envelope, here's our first card design. Our second card design is the Christmas banner card. Go ahead and pull out these parts and pieces now. We'll start with stamping once again. And in this case, we're just going to be using our Cherry Cobbler ink pad. And we're just going to be stamping the word Merry on this die cut banner. Since it is white, I just pulled out, I had a piece of navy cardstock nearby, so I'm just going to use that to set it on to provide a little bit more contrast and make sure I can see really easily where I'm stamping. That's the only stamp for the front of the card. If you want to stamp something on the inside, feel free. Once again, I included a piece of designer series paper for you, but of course you could also stamp on the envelope as well. With our stamping complete, I'm going to go ahead and start on assembly. So there's kind of two parts. We have the card base and then this top assembly, and I'll just start with the card base for now. You could do it in the opposite order as well, but I will just fold my card base in half and get a nice crisp fold on that. And then I'm going to take this embossed piece, which I embossed using the Painted Trees 3D embossing folder. This is so fun, and I love how it adds some texture and a little bit more decoration without competing with the greeting panel. So I'll just put some Stampin' Seal on that and center that up on our Cherry Cobbler cardstock. And then take that assembly and add our Stampin' Seal and put it on the card front. You know, sometimes if the card bases don't fold perfectly in half, I like to just flip it over so that if there's any extra, it's on the top half and you don't see a little ridge peeking through on the bottom. So probably something nobody else would notice, but because I do, I work around it. Okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add this panel to the inside of the card as well. Again, just a fun little something to have inside to keep the color and the bling of the gold going. So I'll just line that along there. And I ended up with overlap on both sides, so I will trim both of those with my paper snips. Okay, this assembly I'm just going to set aside and bring out some of these other pieces. Now I want to quickly note that your kit came with these die cut pieces, and there is the teeny tiny little dot for the eye as well. So just make sure that doesn't get thrown away. But what I'm going to do is start by assembling these pieces. I did use adhesive sheets when I was die cutting the word, the top one. So what I've found to be the easiest is just start peeling from the C and center that up and kind of just continue peeling as you go. And it will stretch out the letters. Be gentle so you don't rip it, but if it stretches them a little bit, you can just kind of push them back into place as you press down to secure. So this is nice because you can actually kind of adjust it as you're going to make sure that everything is lining up. Okay, there's that. And then this tiny little piece also has the Stampin', the adhesive sheet on the back. And so you can just go ahead and adhere that as well. Okay, let's lay out this panel. So we're gonna have Mary popped up on mini Stampin' Dimensionals. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get them placed. I'm not going to peel off the release paper quite yet. I just wanna have this kind of popped up so that I can get a full, of course, then I'm accidentally peeling the release paper off. I just want it to be popped up so I can see exactly what this is going to look like in terms of placement. Because this gets popped up, and then the Christmas part, I'm just using Stampin' Seal. So I'm making sure that this is, you know, straight, and that I kind of like how it looks. And then I'm just gonna do a bit of seal across this, and I'm not going all the way to either side because that will be hanging off of the ends. Okay, I think I like that. Make sure it's straight. And then press down once you're happy with where it is. Okay, now that that is on, I will peel these release papers for real and add this. Okay. Last detail before we attach this to the card base is the ribbon. And this ribbon was out of stock for a while. I think it's really popular. It's just so beautiful. The cherry cobbler and gold satin ribbon. It's absolutely perfect for this card. And what I did is just fold it in half and then string that part through the top. And now I'm going to bring back my card base because I do think you'll want to make sure that you like where this is positioned. There's a lot of flexibility in it, but I ultimately decided that I liked it when it was just a little loop at the top, nothing real big. So I'm gonna get that positioned. And then once again, I'm just going to use Scotch tape. I guess I'm a Minnesota girl, gotta support 3M. So I'll do the Scotch tape. I'll do 2 pieces of that. And I'm making sure that this lays nice and flat and that it comes, you know, about centered down the card. You wanna be careful with using Scotch tape that none accidentally shows over the edge, but it looks like that's fine. Okay. Attaching this to the card base, I am going to use my full-size Stampin' Dimensionals here. Peel those. And then as you're placing, remember, we still need to trim the bottom. So make sure you like where the top is. You don't want to necessarily center it. I would just choose a location for the top part that you like, knowing that we'll come in with our paper snips and trim these little tails. I'll just trim them toward the center like that. And here is our second card design. Our third card design is the Rustic Trees card. Here are the parts and pieces for this design. Like usual, we are going to go ahead and start with our stamping. So in this case, we're going to start with our Pretty Peacock ink pad. And I'm going to stamp these two label elements for the front. The first one is the word Mary, and that's going to go on the Old Olive cardstock. And it is a small stamp, small piece of cardstock, which is why I just love the photopolymer stamps. And just noting, I cleaned this after stamping for our other card, so don't want to contaminate our ink pads. And then I have this tiny little 1/4 inch piece here, and that is going to get stamped with Love from Our Home to Yours. And this is a little bit hard to see again, so let me pull out this contrasting piece of cardstock, and that makes it so much easier. Okay, and with your kit, I will include a couple extra of these tiny pieces just in case you need them. Okay, that's the stamping for the greetings on the outside. Now, for this card, I am also going to stamp an inside greeting. Once again, I provided you with some designer series paper. So when I'm stamping my inner greeting, I'm going to just position that there without securing it to make sure that my greeting ends up actually being centered on what remains of the white, and that there's room for this panel. Of course, you don't have to use this panel if you don't want to. That's all of our stamping. If you want to stamp your envelope, go ahead and do that now. And next, we are done stamping, but continuing with ink. So I'm going to pull out a piece of scratch paper and my embossed basic beige, which once again is using that same Painted Trees 3D embossing folder. And for this, I am going to use two different colors of ink. I have my Old Olive and my Mossy Meadow. Now, when I was playing around with this card, you know, you could get by with just one color of ink. You're able to get enough variation, but I decided to go with two because I did like a little bit more contrast. And once again, noting this card was inspired by the Stampin' Up! Catalog. So I saw this technique of using the sponge dauber to add some color to these trees, and I just couldn't resist. So I decided to go for it. So I'm starting with the Old Olive, the lighter of the colors, and I like to stamp a little bit of it off before taking it to the card. But then I am just going like as gently as possible to really just try to get a subtle color. And then, you know, pick up a little bit more as you need it and just apply some color here. And these 3D embossing folders, they create so much texture that it actually makes this coloring technique pretty easy because there are natural highs and lows. And so the high points are just very easily going to pick up a little bit extra color. So without too much effort, that's what it looks like just with the Old Olive. You can kind of go in and see if there's any missing that you want to fill. But then I'll bring out my Mossy Meadow, and since they're similar shades, I'm not too concerned, especially since I started with the lighter one, but you can just kind of stamp off any ink that's left on your dauber. Looks like I maybe had a couple colors in here already anyway. Probably not best practice, but anyway, coming in now with my Mossy Meadow. For this, I'm trying to just do some highlights. So I am not rubbing this all over. I am just trying to go in and add a little bit more depth. Maybe at the top. Okay. I think I like that. And of course, every card is going to look different. You're not going to get perfect, but my biggest tip is just make sure that you're getting a little bit of the ink off right away, because you'd hate to have a big splotchy circle as part of your card. But that is it for ink use for this card. And I just quickly want to note that you did receive one of these sponge daubers with your kit if you ordered a class by mail kit. Go ahead and save this. You can reuse this. I try not to go with two colors that are too dissimilar. You know, this one is definitely kind of reserved for green, but these last a long time and you can just keep using them over and over. All right, let's get to the assembly. So let's pull out our pretty peacock card base and get that folded in half right along that score line. And then we'll add the front panel and the inside panel. So as I'm adding the inside panel, again, I'm going to put this decorative piece, and this time I am going to put it all the way up against the edge, because that's where I had it when I was doing my stamping. Okay. And then just go ahead and trim any excess if you had a little overlap. Right. We'll add seal to this whole thing. Oh, looks like I'm out of seal. I will go refill. All right, with the magic of video editing, I am back with a full Stampin' seal, if I can remember where I had already placed it. Okay. So we'll just position this inside. You know, and I really loved this color combination in the catalog. I saw the card and I played around, and I actually considered using a Mossy Meadow card base because I thought that it, you know, would tie in with the trees really well, but everything just popped more with the pretty peacock. So I don't know that I would have combined the Mossy Meadow, Old Olive, and Pretty Peacock without seeing it in the catalog. So I'm really happy that I did see it. Once again, draw upon inspiration as it is available. No need to reinvent the wheel here. Okay, we'll get this secured on the front. And then let's go ahead and get our greeting put together again. So like the last time we did this, we'll go ahead. This is just the reverse. The white piece, the basic white, is larger and the cherry cobbler is the one that will go on top. But just start peeling that adhesive sheet off and get this positioned. And peeling it slowly like this, you know, you could certainly peel the whole release paper from that adhesive sheet, and I did that. It just got a little bit unwieldy with everything being sticky all at once. So I do find that peeling little by little was definitely easier in this case. And once again, don't forget your tiny little piece here. If you need take your pick tool or a tweezer or something to get that off, use whatever instrument you need. Okay. And then I'm just going to bring out the 3 components that will make up the card front and get them kind of laid out. And I'm going to be securing all of them with dimensionals and mini dimensionals. So with the dimensional sheets, you know, you end up with this scrap along the outside, and that's probably what I'll end up using for this really skinny 1/4 inch, because I think even a dimensional, a mini dimensional might fit. Let's try it and see. You're gonna have to be very precise with how you position them, but they do fit. Okay. So go ahead and use mini dimensionals, or this is a great time if you have that extra around the edges. I never let that go to waste. I always cut it up and use it. So you can feel free to do the same for this. Okay, let's get this secured right away. And then this is coming off center. It's almost all the way to the right. I want a little bit of the panel showing, but not much. So we'll put that one down. And then this one I think is going to be best with mini dimensionals as well. Okay. And now for this, I'm going to put it about in the center. So just kind of playing around with where it's at once you like it secure. And then our last, the Mary panel. And this I actually kind of tucked under the Christmas a little bit. Just again, love the dimension, love things overlapping and, you know, kind of seeing the Christmas as the most focal point. And then our last touch on this card is some of the gold textured adhesive back dots. They come in different sizes, so you'll get a variety of sizes with your kit. And what you'll do is just take them and position them as you like. So I might do one down here, one to the side, and one up by the tree. And that completes our third and final card. Follow the link in the video description to access my website post for this month's class by mail. It includes the supply list with measurements, as well as a link to a Pinterest board curated with more ideas for using this month's supplies. You can also find more information about next month's class by mail on my website. If you're not already on my email list, go to tinyurl.com/mysweetpaperemail to sign up, and you'll receive monthly emails with new class information. I always love hearing from you, so leave a comment on this video and let me know what you thought of the cards. Until next time, happy stamping.